Hi guys, welcome to this explainer on atomic structure. So there are going to be four aims to this video. The first aim is to look at what the structure of an atom is. We're then going to look at the properties of the subatomic particles. We're going to determine how many subatomic particles an atom has, and then we're going to look at why atoms are neutral, why they don't have any charge. So let's start by looking at our atomic structure. So if we look at our picture of the atom here, we can see that we have rings surrounding a central part of the atom. What we've got is we've got electrons in our shells around the atom. So we can give these circles two different names. We can either call them electron shells or we can call them energy shells. Both of these are correct. And both are accepted by your exam board. You can use either or, they're both correct. In the centre of our atom is a nucleus. Now, a nucleus contains two subatomic particles. We have our protons and we have our neutrons. And they both sit in the nucleus, okay? So what we've actually got is we've got a positive central nucleus, which is very dense and has a lot of the mass of the atom, surrounded by our negative electrons in these shells. So if we look at what properties our subatomic particles have, we'll start with our protons. So protons have a positive charge. If we were to write that charge as a number, we would write it as a +1. They also have a mass of 1 AMU, which stands for atomic mass unit. So chemists have come up with a unit to use just to talk about subatomic particles because they are so small. If we were to use other standard units, the numbers would be very big or very small in terms of how many numbers are included in it. And so we'd have to use standard form to actually write them down. If we look at our neutrons have no charge. They are neutral. If we were to write this, we would write this as a 0. They don't actually contribute to any charge in the atom. However, they do contribute to the mass of the atom because they also have a mass of 1, just like our protons do. Our last subatomic particle are our electrons. Our electrons have a negative charge. And if we were to write our negative charge, we would write it as a -1. However, electrons, unlike our other two subatomic particles, have a very, very small mass. They are tiny compared to our protons and neutrons. We would write the mass of an electron as 1/2000. They are almost 2000 times smaller than a proton or a neutron. So they really don't contribute to the mass of the atom. They're there only in part with their negative charge and to help with the properties such as reactivity. Okay, guys, so if we look at what we can see on the periodic table, this is our view of a square on the periodic table. And what we've got is we've got a helium atom. So we have this number at the top and this number at the bottom. The number at the top, as you can see, tells us the total number of protons and neutrons in the atom, the mass number. Because again, if we look back up here, all of our mass in our atom comes from our protons and our neutrons. So we can see that helium has a mass of 4. If we look at our atomic number, the atomic number tells us how many protons. It also tells us how many electrons, because in an atom, the number of protons is the same as the number of electrons. So if we have 2 protons, we also have 2 electrons. So helium has 2 protons and 2 electrons. Now what we can actually do here is we can use these two numbers to work out how many neutrons. So if we're looking for the number of neutrons, what we would do is we would do the mass number minus the atomic number. So if we did this for helium, we would do 4 minus 2, which tells us there are 2 neutrons. So if we were to write down what's going on inside of our helium atom, we would have 2 protons, 2 neutrons, and 2 electrons. So that's what we can find out from our periodic table. We can do this with any atom on the periodic table as long as we know the mass number and the atomic number as well. Okay, so the last point that I want to talk to you about today is why are atoms neutral? So I've already mentioned that we have 2 charged particles in our atom. We have protons, which are a +1, and we have electrons, which are a -1. Our neutrons play no part in this because they have a neutral charge, they have no charge at all. So they don't contribute to this property of our atom. So if we use our helium as our example, so we have in helium, we have 2 positive protons and we have 2 negative electrons. So overall, our atom would be neutral. And it's neutral because each of our positives is cancelled out by a negative. So our neutrality in our atom comes from the fact that the positive charge is equal to the negative charge it cancels out. Right, guys, so that was a really quick recap and explainer of basic atomic structure. So we've got, if we quickly go back, we've got our protons, neutrons, and electrons. Electrons are in electron shells or energy shells around the protons and neutrons in the nucleus. Protons have a positive charge and a mass of 1. Neutrons have no charge and a mass of 1. And electrons have a negative charge and are very small. They are 1/2000. Our mass number is the total number of protons and neutrons, and our atomic number is the number of neutrons. So we can, number of protons. So we can use our atomic number and our mass number to work out how many neutrons we have. Atoms on our periodic table are neutral overall because the positive charges are equal to the negative charges and they cancel out. Thank you for listening, and I will see you again soon with another explainer.